Okay, it's 6:03. We're going to call the meeting to order. Before we get started, I'm going to read the notice. Same one I read before. Notice to hold teleconference meeting pursuant to Minnesota Statutes 13D David .021. Due to the current federal and state emergency declarations and guidance about limiting person-to-person contact due to COVID-19 pandemic, by action of the school board of the Pelican Rapids School District, all future meetings of the Pelican Rapids School Board will be conducted in accordance with Minnesota Statutes 13D David .021. Meetings by telephone or other electronic means until further notice. One or more board members may participate by telephone or other electronic means. In accordance with Minnesota State Statutes 13D David .021, members of the public are not permitted to attend this meeting due to the current health pandemic. Persons may monitor this meeting from a remote location via Zoom. The link to this meeting will be posted on our district website. Public comment for school board meetings during opportunity for visitors to speak may be submitted as follows to Barb Ripley. So it's B Ripley, BRIPLEY at pelicanrapids.k12.mn.us. That being said, we have everybody in attendance except for Ann, and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag.
To the flag of the United States of America,
under God, indivisible, justice for all.
With liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Thumbs up? Okay. First item up will be to approve the meeting agenda. Do we have any changes, Mr. Ness, with the meeting agenda?
In a special meeting, you can't change the agenda. We have to strictly follow the special meeting notice, so there's no changes.
Okay, sounds good.
I move to approve the meeting agenda as presented.
I'll second.
The motion by Greg, a second by Brittany. Any discussion on the meeting agenda? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and I'll do a roll call. Greg?
Aye.
Okay. Brittany?
Aye.
Brenda?
Aye.
Mike? Aye. Aye. Motion carries. Agenda carries. Next item up, approve the MOU with Pelican Rapids Education Association regarding severance pay within the approved 1920 and 2021 master agreement. Should have a copy of that.
I would think it would be appropriate for Rudy to give an overview, John. And I see Greg has a question as well.
Go ahead, Greg.
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay.
All right, perfect. Thanks, everyone. So what you have in terms of the MOU is a memorandum of understanding with the Pelican Rapids Education Association. We've already settled the master agreements for the school year 2019-20 and 2021 or 2020-21. So the memorandum of understanding in front of you is to expand the early retirement incentive. So today in our master agreement, we already have a early retirement benefit, and you guys hear me speak about the OPEB benefit. Essentially, anybody that was hired I believe before January 31st of 1987 receives that OPEB benefit. Today, there is 2 remaining teachers that qualify for that OPEB benefit. The union approached us and asked us that there were 2 participating teachers that would want to retire, but were asking if there was any additional incentive. So we met with legal And as an administrative team, we confirmed that it makes sense for the school district to move forward with the MOU. The reason for is with the pandemic and trying to reduce costs for the district, it made sense. The only additional benefit that the union is asking for is to pay them 24 months or 2 years of insurance contributions, which is very affordable. And I'll go over the numbers in a little bit. In working with legal and the union, we were very careful in terms of making sure that the wording in the MOU, one, was not discriminatory, and one, targeted a group of teachers. So the best solution was to expand the already open benefit, which is what we have in front of us today. I'm going to stop now, and I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to ask any questions regarding the MOU before we dive into the numbers.
Greg, you have a
Hey,
question?
Rudy. Greg Larson here.
Yes, sir. Yep, go ahead, sir.
Yes, Greg Larson here. Rudy, who prepared the memorandum of understanding?
We met with Christy Hastings out of Pemberton Law, who is kind of our go-to district lawyer, sir.
Did Christy Hastings prepare the memorandum of understanding?
Yes, Christy Hastings prepared the memorandum of understanding after we told Christy that giving her the language in terms of what the union needed and what was the district willing to give.
From a financial perspective, this is in line with what you consider to be reasonable under the circumstances?
Yes, I believe it's very, very reasonable, and it's actually to the benefit of our union, and it's to the benefit of the district, and it will contribute to the bottom line. And I'll answer your question more in detail, sir, once we talk about the projected cost savings in the next slide.
Thank you.
Okay. Did everybody get a chance to the PDF with the projected cost savings? Otherwise, I can share my screen and go over those numbers.
Rudy,
I
can
don't
you
have
please
it.
share your screen?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Is Bill in the room?
Yes.
Yes, Bill is in the room, yes.
Okay. Could you ask Bill to enable the screen sharing?
Can you enable the screen sharing? Maybe. No, I hadn't turned it off. All right. One of those menus that pops up.
I remember, I know I've seen it before. I'm having a hard time finding
Share
the
screen.
setting.
Rudy, I think you could start giving an overview, and if we get the shared screen, then we can move forward with that as well.
Sorry, I'm not
Okay,
finding.
perfect. Sounds good. So I'll go ahead and I'll do that. Thank you, Mr. Ness.
The green button on the.
That's okay. We'll go ahead and I'll talk through it. So in the memorandum of understanding, we are expanding the early retirement incentive that we already have in place. Now, two things to note. The first one is we have 2 teachers that already qualify for the OPEB benefit. And those 2 teachers are the ones that are going to retire if this memorandum of understanding is approved. Now, one thing to note is the OPEB benefit was already bonded for many years ago, and that is no cost to the district. We have an OPEB trust that will cover the first part of it. So that is not even a cost to us. The second thing the memorandum of understanding is doing is it's giving almost a bit of a, for lack of better words, we're going to piggyback off the early retirement benefit in the master agreement by the district giving 24 months of insurance contributions. And what that did is we wrote the language in partnership with the union and our lawyer, Christy Hastings, to give the benefit to those 2 teachers that qualify, plus the additional teacher that submitted her retirement this calendar year, this fiscal year. What that does is we have 3 teachers that would that were really at the end of the pay scale. In budgeting for the fiscal year 2021, we would have budgeted $285,000 for those three teachers. That included both salary and benefits. What the memorandum is doing is allowing those 3 teachers to go ahead and retire earlier than they wish they would have, and in return, we're going to pay 2 years of insurance contribution. The theory and the process behind this is that we hire 3 young teachers that are on the first lane within the first few steps. So let's assume that we hire 3 young kids that are either in their first, second, or third year of teaching. When they come to the district, they're going to be somewhere around the $45,000 salary range. And because they're in that first year, they don't qualify for 403B matching contributions, and we paid less in benefits in terms of FICA and TRA because their salary is much lower. So in comparison, instead of budgeting $285,000, we would be budgeting $175,000. That gives the district a range of potential net savings of $110,000, okay? Again, and I'm giving you guys projected numbers. Then we have to pay as a lump sum the 24 months of insurance contributions that the employer would give them per the master agreement. And that would be a total of about $35,000 for the 3 teachers that would take advantage of this. So at the end of next year, we're going to see a potential savings of over a little bit in the ballpark of about $74,000, 638. So round it up to 75. So is this a good benefit for the district? Yes, I believe so. I should say I do. I do think it's a great benefit to the district. Is it a great benefit to our teachers? I think it is. It gives them the opportunity to retire and to retire with really a good experience, knowing that their district really looked out for them, and it only increases that positive message to continue to work with them. We ran the numbers a significant amount of times, and best part of it is that they all checked off. Again, I'm going to stop right now, and I'm going to give you guys the time to ask any questions, or if you need me to clarify anything else.
Rudy, do you want to try share your screen again? Or maybe you already have.
Yep. There we go.
Okay.
Perfect. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, just need to zoom in.
Okay. 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 Is that better?
Yes.
All right. So again, here is the 3 teachers that we are talking about that would qualify for this benefit. Here is the salary ranges plus all the benefits that are a cost to the district. At the end, this is how much those 3 teachers cost us, for a total of $285. You know, and just to kind of recap my my words that I just said a little bit ago, the plan is to hire 3 new teachers that would be in the first lane within the first steps. You can see the significant difference in terms of what a veteran tenure teacher cost us versus what a younger teacher cost us. Here is our projected savings, and you can see per tier. In salary alone, we would be saving about $89,000. Once you add up all the benefits that cost the district, you're looking at a net savings of $110,000. Here is the 24 months of insurance contributions that the MOU would entitle them to, and then we would pay them before September 1st of 2021, which would be counted in next year's budget. So at the end of the year, we have savings of $110 minus the $35,000 that we would owe in that new additional benefit, for a gross savings of $74,638. Again, as a board, you know, this would be a really good decision in terms of what we talk about, that board goal of financial stability. It would add that $75,000 back to our bottom line, and it'll continue to make our fund balance grow. With this, you know, we're gonna continue that hard work that we've done over the last year and a half of wanting to reestablish our fund balance. So again, I'm going to stop now, and if you guys need me to answer any questions, or again to clarify any of the information you're seeing in your screen. Mr. Larson, did I answer your question regarding if this is a good potential savings to the district?
Yes, you answered what the savings would be. Thank you.
I guess there's no questions here, Rudy. I guess with we don't know what the state will do in a couple of years. We don't know what enrollment will do if we end up with another virtual school year. I think this probably be a good idea. And normally I don't think we'd entertain it to this extent other years, but to me, I think it's probably the right time to do it.
Yep, I completely agree, John. Mr. Carter, I think we are, because of the pandemic and because of our mission to reestablish financial stability, I think that is one of the reasons why it really, really interests us from a district perspective. You know, once you guys go ahead and pass a motion to approve this, maybe I'll have Mr. Ness, you know, talk about, if approved, what are the next steps to make sure that we fill those vacancies. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rudy. Jerry, do you have any comments here?
No, I think what Christy Hastings is saying is she's done a number of these in the past few months. Lots of districts are looking to reduce costs because of the unknown with the COVID and how we're moving forward. And there's also staff members that they're at that retirement age and they're concerned coming back, to be very honest. So I think it's a wise move for the district to do this. And I'll just keep going what Rudy had talked about. So what happens if this motion and resolution, I should say, is passed? What will happen tomorrow is the teachers, we have the retirement letters, those will be acted on, but we'll post already for the positions. So we'll move forward with that post interview, and then hopefully even maybe by the June 15th board meeting, we would have candidates to fill these positions already.
Greg, do you have a question?
Yes. You know, from a financial perspective, I get how this makes sense, especially under the current situation that we're in. A part of me doesn't like providing incentives to teachers with experience that, and I don't have statistics to back up anything I'm saying right now, but you know, students get taught by our teachers, and teachers with more experience have additional value that corresponds with that experience. There's certainly teachers without any experience or very little experience that can serve perhaps just as well as a teacher with a lot of experience. There's no question about that. But when we post for this position, how do we post it? If our target audience, based on our goal, is for those teachers with very little experience, does that get posted?
No, you would, I don't even want to say it's a social studies position. You would post for the grade level or the posting. So it's a grade 7 through 12 social studies position. Then what would happen is your principals and an interview team would review all the applications. You still go after the best person for the job. And so if you had someone with 3 years experience, you're going to save $70,000, for example, rather than the 74. So our principals would have lead a team of interviewers and have to hire the best person for the position. Although Mr. Nelson, I know you interviewed recently for I believe it was 2nd grade. Could you just give an example of the people that you interviewed and their experience levels that you interviewed?
We ended up interviewing 7. We had another one set up, and then she took another job before the interview. So we had 7. 6 of those were brand new, without any experience. 1, the teachers had some teaching experience. So what we saw is most of the people that were applying were fairly new teachers, not people with a lot of experience.
And that's very typical in smaller districts, teachers coming right out of college. It doesn't matter their age. You know, they could be 50, 60 years old, 55 years old and coming out of college right now going. So it's the level of experience is what we're talking about here. So yeah, that's very common in a smaller district, which I would say Pelican is smaller to medium-sized district in Minnesota is where we'd be at. So it's very common that you have some teachers right out of college applying for schools of this size.
Mr. Ness, if I might just add that also the practice in Pelican Rapids is that we always search for the best candidate, but also we have the employment practice that we honor half of the years of service. So we could potentially get a very strong candidate that has you know, been a teacher for over 10 years, but we only honor 5 of those, which then again, you know, it's a win-win for the district.
I'd like to make the motion to approve the MOU with PREA regarding the severance pay between 2019, 2020, and 2020, 2021
Master agreement. The motion by Mike to approve the MOU with Pelican Rapids Education Certification. Do we have a second? A second by Brenda. Okay, any additional discussion on the MOU motion that's on the table? Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the MOU signify by saying aye, and I'll do a roll call. Brittany?
Aye.
Brenda?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Aye. Greg?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item up, presentation of executive plan by the admin team. Who wants to start?
I will start with the admin team, and I believe you have a copy in front of you. Is that correct?
I have one on.
And you know, the opening question there, you know, it's no secret that the board is struggling with a difficult decision on how to move forward. And I read a lot of leadership materials. John Gordon, some of my favorite people, you know, really they talk a lot about trust. And they talk about you as a school board, who as superintendent are you going to trust to do the right thing for the district? Who is the staff going to trust, the students going to trust, the community? And just, I'm trying to maybe set the stage a little bit about simplifying and because we got lots of things going on, whether we're doing a interim or a permanent or a shared, or, you know, all of these things come into play. And I think what we have to do is we have to find the right person, and then we can move forward with the plan. And so at our last meeting, we talked about Mr. Korf, and I'm specifically going to talk about Mr. Korf in the position right now. Later on, you'll see other options come into play. By no means is the admin team assuming the decision is being made for the school board. The board is making the decision here. Here's another option that we are looking at. So as of September 1, Mr. Korf will be a licensed superintendent. He is working through Moorhead State University with the grad plan there. The idea would be then to hire him as an interim superintendent for the 2021 school year. He would also remain as the high school principal, and we'll dive deeper into that as we go. And currently looking at continuing coaching. We, again, with COVID, we don't know what sports are going to be there. We don't know if students are going to be in the building. We don't know a lot of things right now. So so as this plan will have to continue to evolve as those things, you know, right now you're using my license for the interim superintendent. It's a requirement for a district to have a superintendent. So I'm serving the role of interim superintendent and would continue that through the summer duties. You know, once the hire is done, we'll be changing. It would go into some mentorship type things, and planning for the school year is what we'd be working on. And then following Mr. Korf getting his license, the board would take action to move the interim superintendent title from me to Mr. Korf. And then I would, if you so choose, would continue to mentor Mr. Korf and the admin team. I think we've learning to work together through Zoom. It's been a good experience. And then that way, well, I'll just leave it at that. So one of the big things, the changing for the board a little bit is, you know, we've been looking, you know, as an experienced superintendent, and Mr. Korf does not have that exact superintendence. I listed a couple of examples. Since Dr. Richardson's passing, Mr. Korf has been serving as the acting administrator. He's getting trial by fire here, if you will, some very stressful times doing a lot of the day-to-day superintendent duties. One of the big things is you'll see a new superintendent coming into the district. they have to spend a lot of time and energy getting to know people. You'll see, you've heard some of the candidates mention a 100-day plan. I'm going to meet with community leaders. I'm going to meet with education leaders, the staff, everybody. And an advantage, I guess, would be for Mr. Korf in the sense that he does know people. He knows the district, he knows the board, he knows policies, he knows how the district functions. And so those are certainly things that Mr. Korf would not have to spend as much energy. He would have to spend some time because he would be in a different role. He would be knowing the board in a different role as an interim superintendent. The relationship is different from a high school principal to a superintendent. It would, and then with community leaders, he would be looked at as more as a business leader, the CEO of the district, if you will, and as superintendent. And so there's some differences, but yet the relationships are probably there. The next paragraph talk about, so if you happen to hire Mr. Korf as an interim, we were looking at a dean of students vacancy and hiring an internal candidate. There's candidates on staff that are interested in this position. And what happens with this is, again, with COVID, if we were in a blend, we're trying to get people that we know, continue to know. Mr. Korf, with this role, keeping his high school principal title, not knowing if he'll be the superintendent, permanent superintendent down the road, he would remain helping with teacher evaluations and certainly training the dean of students. The dean of students would really, in effect, do the day-to-day principal, everything from leading staff. Well, we'll look at the next page with all the duties, but they would be the principal in many ways without the license. So it'd be much like you need my license as superintendent, you need Mr. Korf's license as principal. If there was a severe discipline incident, the dean of students would do all the research, the investigation, handing out of say it was a suspension, a 2-day suspension. Everything would be prepped. Mr. Korf would have to review and sign that. Suspensions have to be signed by a principal. Rudy talked about the teachers just now as a conservative plan. Financially, it's going to help the district. This plan is similar, that we believe there'd be a $75,000 to $85,000 savings if this plan is approved, and more details are coming on that on the next page. And certainly as you're going into this, the board would have to evaluate the plan probably earlier than you would actually like to, but I would say December at the latest, very early January, because if Mr. Korf was going to return to the principalship and you were going to open up the position for a permanent superintendent again, you need to get out in that December, January, hire in the February, early March. You'll have your largest pool of candidates at that point. And before I turn the page to page 2 to talk about more details, that's an overview. Are there questions, or should we continue with all the details and then ask questions at the end? I'm fine either way.
You just continue, I guess.
Okay, so on the next page, we get into bullet point. I like bullet points. It really kind of itemizes out, here's what we have to do. So if tonight, for example, the next item on your agenda is extend an offer to the superintendent, if that was the case, the first thing you would do is negotiate an interim superintendent contract with Mr. Korf. It would not go into effect until he is a licensed superintendent. So he would remain as the acting administrator and high school principal. And then you'd have a contract all set to go, and it would be pending his license. The next bullet is just I'm remaining until Mr. Korf is licensed. And then probably at your September meeting, you're taking official action to move the interim superintendent title to Mr. Korf from me, and you'd have that contract in place. And then the plan currently is that I would be retained in a mentorship role. And if that's still the case, I would be available to do that. The Dean of Students, the main duties, discipline and truancy, scheduling, prep work for suspensions, expulsions, I use that. Supervision duties, there's a lot of supervision, bus duty, noon duties, hallway duties, lots of supervision related to this position. Plan and lead staff meetings. This person would be the leader. I'm sure Mr. Korf would be attending as necessary. Orientation for 7th grade, the new, this year's 6th graders coming into 7th grade, there'd be orientation. Certainly assisting or leading in all major events, homecoming, prom, graduation. Tremendous amount of time and energy is spent on those. We also believe the person, we have quality teachers that would be looking at this position. They could be a mentor teacher. They could go into classrooms, help in that way. Summer school supervision, and then the catch-all, all other duties as assigned, and there will be plenty of those. With the COVID-19, and if there was a blended start or students are all in or they're not, there'll be a number of situations. Say, for example, this is not for sure, but say half the kids were coming in one day and 2 days a week, and the other half were coming in the other way. Someone's got to schedule this. Someone has to help plan this. There's a tremendous amount of work, and that is certainly not the case. We're hoping that all kids are in the building and they're safe to start the year. So again, if this plan was approved tonight, items to be completed, we would post the position. We would select the candidates to be interviewed. The interview team would be the admin team. So it would be Mr. Korf, Mr. Nelson, Mr. Martinez, and myself would be interviewing for that. And the goal would be is to have the position approved at the June 15th school board meeting. Questions yet, or do we keep going?
I have a question.
Yes.
In regards to the Dean of Students position, what happens to that position if, say, you mentioned December, potentially doing an evaluation, and one of the parties decides that current setup does not work? What happens to the Dean of Students?
Right. That we would have to have an MOU with the teacher union. So say, for example, the person did come from the teacher group, we would have to have an arranged MOU with the union prior to this being approved, say on June 15th. We would have to have an MOU with them saying that they retain their tenure rights. So what would happen then is that whoever's the Dean of Students, if it didn't work out, would return to the classroom. Then at that point, you would have to be deciding as a board, just saying it's too much work for, we need a principal with a license. You could then, you could either go out for another Dean of Students, or you could go for an assistant principal or a principal. So you have options at that point. So you'd not only be evaluating Mr. Korf as a superintendent, you'd certainly be evaluating the administrative structure, the Dean of Students, is it the right position, all of those things. Yes.
So that the Dean of Students would go. So Jared, the Dean of Students would go back into the classroom teacher would not have a job, correct?
Yes, that would be correct. So the person, whoever, if you took a Dean of Students out of the classroom and you put them, you took a teacher, current teacher for Pelican, and you moved them into the Dean of Students, you'd create a vacancy which would be hired, and yes, that would be the case. Yeah, it's not easy in that fashion. The other avenue is, well, they certainly would be available. It would depend on, is the Dean of Students not working, or is the actual person doing the Dean of Students job not working in that role? And there's, next year you'll have other retirements and other positions. So you'd have to evaluate where best. I would, I think if we're giving them a chance and the proper training, I think the plan will work. If everyone's in there working hard and being trained properly, this plan, you know, could work. A lot of districts use this type of plan.
So that would depend on the student that would get hired to fill the vacancy. Or excuse me, the teacher that gets hired to fill the vacancy in what area they teach.
Correct. So whoever gets hired for the position will create a vacancy in whatever classroom they left or whatever subject that they left. Yes.
So if all of a sudden we decide the dean of students isn't working, we want to go back to the model we're at. So the dean of students would go back to his teaching job. That teacher who got hired would be essentially placed on leave or looking for another position.
That's correct, and they would be probationary. Coming from any district, or if they're a new hire, they wouldn't have tenure. If they're coming from another district and they have tenure already, they would be in a probationary teacher status starting out. Yep, that is correct.
Okay.
And the principal would resume full principal responsibilities at that point.
So are you talking about Mr. Korf returning?
I'm talking about Brian Court.
Okay, so are you saying if he's not the permanent superintendent?
Right.
Yes, he is the high school principal, you know, so it's interim superintendent, high school principal. So he would retain those rights as principal. That would be correct. So if you, you know, you could decide to continue this plan for 2-3 years or into the foreseeable future, or if you see that, so it could be not take the interim title away, or you could, you know, you really think you need a full-time superintendent, you would have to judge that, and then the high school principal could be hired. You know, I'm not sure what Mr. Nelson's licensure is. You know, are you a K-12 principal, Mr. Nelson? You know, so there's a scenario where Mr. Nelson could be the principal and have a dean of students working with him at the high school. You really have to tailor it to the staff that you have and the group that you have, and there's many different scenarios that can take place. So I'm just going to go back to the plan and kind of finish it up, and then it's time for the board to discuss and ask clarifying questions. So the third page, we're at the May 26th special school board meeting. This is tonight. So we're presenting the plan right now, and then now you will deliberate when we're done with the presentation. And you certainly have options for the interim superintendent. You know, Mr. Korf, Mr. Froke is their candidates for a permanent superintendent. These are people that have applied for the position. Your finalists would be Mr. Froke, Mr. Nudell. You also have a number of other candidates that have applied for the position that you could refer back to. Other options we talked about last meeting is sharing the superintendent, and specifically with one of the finalists, which would be Mr. Nudell. So you'd look at a possible 3 days, 60% with Pelican Rapids and 40% with Norman County East. And there's a savings there as well. So your cost of your superintendency would go down as well in that range. So depending on the decision that you make tonight, tomorrow would be a busy day in the sense that you would be, if Mr. Korf was extended an offer for the interim, you would be negotiating a contract, you would be posting for the Dean of Students position, we'd be interviewed and hired. If you were going to go with Mr. Nudell or Mr. Froke, you would be making the decision on interim, permanent, start negotiations is where you'd be tomorrow. And the same if you were going to share a superintendent. If you made that decision tonight, you would go down the line of start negotiations with Norman County East. I know you have a June 1 work session. You probably, we probably need to do a special board meeting again. You could have both. You could have a work session and a special board meeting. We need to do that. But I believe by then we would have an approved contract with the superintendent candidate that you select. Other things that we have to do, there's a summer facility usage. And the last bullet there, we actually approved tonight. So now with the approval, we'll be posting teacher vacancies. That should have been shifted up to the May 26th agenda rather than here. And then June 15th, you know, depending on who you hire again, you're looking at, if you do hire Mr. Corp as the interim, we would be looking at interviews, and hopefully the Dean of Students would be there. We have to have the budget approved at this meeting, and then we just need, we're hoping to do approved teacher hires as well. So we weren't quite sure if we'd have the MOU with the union done. That was kind of late this afternoon, so that's why some of these items aren't in the right date. So that's a lot that we talked about. The last page is just the organizational chart. So you have the school board, and then underneath the school board, going back to the plan we were presenting, Mr. Korf would be the interim superintendent and secondary principal. I would be on the side there mentoring, and then you'd have your dean of students, elementary principal, activities director, and finance director. So that's what your leadership chart, organizational chart would look like. So please, board, questions. You know, I have spoken a lot. Questions to Mr. Korf, to Mr. Martinez, to Mr. Nelson, myself, other board members. I would say, John, I think we're at the point of discussion time, and certainly every piece of information, you know, is not in here. It's an overview. One question that Ann brought up in an email was curriculum. We had talked about getting a curriculum cycle for purchasing, and some things I would recommend. The service cooperative has education experts to help with those types of things. So hiring basically a consultant and I believe Mr. Nelson, correct me if I'm wrong, Christy Sullivan from Lakes Country is working with your elementary staff already.
Correct. We had Christy Sullivan in at a workshop in February, and we're doing some looking at writing curriculum, and we were going to follow up here in the spring, and because of COVID, we will pick up in the fall with the discussion that we had with Christy Sullivan. So.
Rudy, are you the one who came up with the savings for the executive plan?
As a team, we did. We sat down multiple days for a significant number of hours trying to make sure that we put the best information out there possible for you guys to make a decision. And with certainty, I can tell you guys that the savings are there.
Are you able to show us where the savings or how the savings came about?
Yeah, absolutely. Can everyone see the screen now?
You zoom in just a little bit.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so here's the current structure of our district as it stands today. Going into the next year, this is what our projected cost would have been. So you can see by essentially if we would have kept everything as is, we would have looked at a total cost for the positions as is at $674,000. That is assuming that we would have hired a full-time superintendent with what our cap was. And when we published our brochure, that was our maximum, our range between 125 and 135. Okay, so if we go into the executive plan, this is what that would look like. We would have an interim superintendent that would retain the secondary principal title, and we would try to exercise the same interim contract that we've had in the past. And you know, we would be looking at a potential superintendent range of about 125. I'm sorry, I'm trying to multitask here so I don't lose my spot. The other thing, you know, that we would talk about is dean of students. And again, this is just a projected cost in terms of what we think is out there. Again, savings could be greater, could be lower, but this is kind of a what we benchmark to be.
Rudy, I would like to add something in there. For the board, it's very typical that a dean of students that's coming from staff, you basically base it off of the teachers, and then you add a percentage, 10-15% for additional duties that the candidate, the dean would be creating. So it's typically very much the teacher contract that they're currently on, and then moving forward with that.
Then again, you know, elementary principal AD role would remain as is. Finance director will remain as is. So all in all, where we see our potential savings for the majority of the plan would be savings at the superintendency spot, at the dean of students position, and potentially whatever vacancy the dean of student is. So again, you know, we talked about in the plan that if a potential teacher within the district shifts over to a dean of students, or however we decide to post, there might potentially be a vacancy in there. So at the end of the day, we're looking at a cost of $590,000 versus a cost of $674, given the district a range of savings at about $84,000, depending on how negotiations go with the interim secondary principal negotiations. So that's what we have for you guys. Questions at the moment? Yes, Mr. Larson.
I have a question for Mr. Ness. In the executive plan, Principal Korf was offered the position of interim superintendent, and he took that position. The executive plan indicated that you would continue as interim until August 31st. And then he would take over September 1. And then subsequent to that, the executive plan indicates that you would continue in a mentorship role for Mr. Korf. How long a time period would that subsequent mentorship role for Mr. Korf be?
Typically, what I have done in the past few years, it would be a year, but certainly available to answer questions after that. You sort of want to go through the cycle. The year is a cycle in the sense that the summer, you'd be preparing for the fall in service and all of that, getting ready for the school year. We'd actually have all of the school board meetings, agendas, you know, in files so you can add things as you go. So you want to go through the cycle of a year. And so working with Rudy on the budget that starts in the fall. Going in through the year, if the budget is sound and you don't have to make cuts, great. If you do, then you have to go through planning for your staffing in the ULA positions and you know, all the things with that just the business. So basically going through a full year cycle is what you know has been the plan. And I would say I think that $7,500 is high. Dr. Richardson and I was much less than that. The only reason it's higher right now is because of interim superintendency and working with the hires. So I would say it would be under $5,000 for sure. You know, just depending on the needs of the admin team, because they've indicated that you have new people in and we just kind of plan the year. It's all about planning. So I don't anticipate it would be a real time intensive. It mainly is Mr. Corp might have a question. He sends me a text. I do some research, get back to him on how to handle a situation. So so I think a year would be appropriate, but I've been a mentor to the Minnewaska superintendent, the Henning superintendent in the past couple of years, and they're still calling me, and I just help out where I can. So it's something that someone with my age experience it's sort of the giving back to help out the next generation of superintendents. That would be a mission of mine, I guess, if you will.
So would that be a year starting September 1 of 2020?
I would think it would be July 1 and go to June 30th, because even though he'll be acting administrator, so we will certainly, one of the big things that I like to do is have a school board retreat, probably a half-day retreat, and we'd probably retreat all the way to your media center where you're currently, some of you are at right now. And we'd really plan the year. You know, you plan out the goals, you plan the year, you look at the calendar, you look at everything. And I really believe a school is tied to that calendar and all the things associated with it. So we would really lay out the school year and then follow that and monitor and adjust as we go. So I would work with Mr. Corp on how we would set up that school board retreat, how we would move forward with the school year. So yep, I just, you know, and I do a lot of things with communication. I believe, I firmly believe that every week the school board needs reporting on what's happened in the district this past week, and also what's upcoming. You're always planning the upcoming agenda. I also believe that the principal, or the superintendent, I should say, should be communicating with the community and also with their staff. So people want to know what's going on. I think that's how you build trust. That's how you build, you know, if you ever in the future have to go out for a bond or an operating levy, and hopefully you don't have to for a long time, you can't just go out there and not be known. You need to go out there. They need to trust you way ahead of time. So then they believe when you're going, we need this for our school district. We need this, you know, it's not a want. We're asking the public for help here. And so that's where inroads on building. So, you know, and Rudy has a lot of training with the superintendent and the finance. You know, the big one is the levy certification that we have to do in September, and the final in December. And there's the world's best workforce plan that has to be developed, and this position will be working with achievement and integration. You know, there's just a lot of things that we would go through on a daily basis, and some of it he's going to have to learn and trial by fire, and then ask questions afterwards. Sometimes we'll give him a heads up on you need to get this done. So
Thank you. The reason I had asked was I know Principal Korf at our last meeting indicated, if I recall correctly, that it was important for him if he was to be extended an offer for you to remain in that position. So thank you for that response,
Yep.
Jim.
One thing I'll add is, you know, when you're having a mentor, you're getting one person's perspective, a perspective, and it's me. One of the key things that whoever's in the superintendent role has to do, they have to be involved with the Lakes Country Superintendents Group, and they are meeting. Mr. Korf is doing that right now via Zoom on a lot of things with summer school, COVID, all of that. He needs to attend those meetings on a regular basis because he'll then see there's quite a group and they learn from each other. So it won't be just me mentoring, but by him attending meetings. There's also something from MASA, the Minnesota Association of School Administrators. They have what's called a Great Start workshop. I would be surprised if they didn't do these via Zoom or something this year. And they go through, a lot of things in a group about what the superintendency is about and how to communicate with the board, working with policies, doing all those things. So Mr. Korf will be getting a lot of mentorship. Mine would be more finely tuned to him and Pelican Rapids School District, where the others are probably more statewide. How do you work with MASA? How do you work with MSBA? How do you work with MREA to get the best deals, if you will, and the most influence for the Pelican Rapids School Districts? Because Pelican Rapids has some unique needs that the state legislature needs to hear about too. So it's a very broad, superintendency is a broad position, and I think having experience with Rudy and Mr. Nelson really allows a person like Mr. Korf to be able to focus on that, learning that superintendency.
This isn't a motion by any means, but I want to voice my position to the board. And I'd also like to provide, if the board is okay with it, and if it's appropriate, an opportunity for Principal Korf to address the potential position of interim superintendent. But for the board's sake, my position right now, and again, this is not a motion, I'd like to see an offer extended to Principal Korf for the interim superintendent position beginning on September 1, 2020, contingent upon current interim superintendent Jerry Ness remaining as interim until August 31, 2020. I'd like to see current interim superintendent Ness continue to mentor Principal Korf during his interim superintendent position until June 30, 2021. And also like to see Principal Korf continue coaching student athletes enrolled in the Pelican Rapids School District. That's my position. Just thinking out loud right now. I just wanted to express that to the board.
Any thoughts, Brian, on coaching and how far along?
Got a few years left, I'd like to do.
Could Mr. Korf get on the screen?
Well,
So I guess to answer the question about coaching is what I'd like to do is I'd like to continue coaching here for a few years. I don't know how many years that is, but I really don't want to tell a girls basketball team that I'm out. I'll be honest with you right now. and I want to do that for a few years. I think we got a good thing going. If it would mean no coaching, I'd rather stay put at principal so I can continue to coach. But I'd be interested in the superintendency, principal, and continue coaching. How many years? I can't answer that because things change, but I'd like to do it for a few years. No more than 10, I know that for sure. However, the next thing is I don't plan leaving Pelican Rapids. I want to be here. I'll retire. I don't have a plan to leave. So that's my other thing I'm concerned about too, long term. So.
Mr. Ness, typically, are there any superintendents who coach?
I wouldn't say it's a typical scenario, but I don't know if you remember the name Gerhard Might, I believe. He was in Rotsey for a while years ago, but he won a number of state football championships at Minnesota. So, I've thought a lot about that one. Actually, as a high school principal, your day is really tight and you have to do quick decisions. You have teacher evaluations, you have teacher concerns, you have student discipline, you have a lot of things that way. In a superintendency, you can schedule your meetings and your time a little bit different. I think Mr. Korf would have to have a very, very good assistant. So for example, I don't know when your practices start, but I'll say practices start at 4:30. Mr. Korf might not get there till 5 o'clock because he has duties that he has to complete. But typically you're doing warm-ups and you're getting people, you can do drills. So he would have to have a very trusted assistant to be able to handle some of those things. I think the board would have to be flexible. Monday night, I know you have your board meetings Monday night. Maybe sometimes you have to look at schedules and maybe you have to change up a little bit to accommodate that. But it's not typical, but it's not rare or unusual either. There's lots of people. I know there's lots of principals that stay connected with the students that way too, and it gives you the connection to the student body in a way that, as Mr. Korf, if he has a dean of students that's doing disciplining and different things, and he's in his office working with Rudy on finance stuff, you do the farther you go up the chain a little bit, the farther you get away with students. So you have to make a concerted effort to make sure that you're connecting with them somewhere, whether you're in the hallways in the morning or the cafeteria or between classes. You need to get out of the office and go see why you're doing your work. And that's the kids. So,
So with this plan, I'm guessing if the superintendent and high school principal, we're looking at this being a potentially long-term if we extend Brian past the interim stage with the combined duties, or would we want to appoint Brian full-time superintendent and then go back to a high school principal model? What would that do to the dean of students then?
Your dean of students is probably going away in that point, but I don't think you need to make that decision tonight. I think that's a decision you make in December, January, after you see the plan working. So really what you would be doing is you'd be hiring Mr. Korf as an interim. He would remain the title of the high school principal. The dean of students would be doing the day-to-day, if you will, of the principal with Mr. Korf's training. And then you really take a thorough look at it. We would have to do some staff I think the evaluation would be, let's do staff surveys, let's do school board surveys, let's really see how is this working. You got to talk to Mr. Korf and Mr. Nelson and Mr. Martinez. Is this working the way you do? So then you have options, then you can say, we really do need a full-time superintendent. You could then offer the job to Mr. Korf. If he decides, no, I want to go back to the principalship, you open it up. Those are things that I think you'll know a lot more in 6 months than you do right now. It would be my answer to that. Really, how is it working? What's happening with school, the start of school with COVID and all of those things. We have so many unknowns right now that it's difficult. But I don't think you're taking any options off the table. So if you make Mr. Korf a superintendent full-time, yes, you would need a high school principal. Could that be Derek Nelson full-time principal with a dean of students working with him? So there's lots of different avenues that you could go. But eventually, if you get larger, for example, if you grew as a district, different things happen, you definitely might have to go back to a principal role. But again, not necessarily. How's that for an answer? I mean, you really, it all depends on who's in the role and how effective they are. You know that. I mean, hiring the right people is the key thing here. So if you hire a great dean of students, you might get by just with that dean of students.
I guess I was just worried that we hire a new teacher to fill that dean of students position, and then we go a year, and then they're looking for work again. That's my probably the biggest hang up with this.
And my biggest concern with this plan is we keep talking about the uncertainty and the unknown going forward in general. And I'm not saying by any means Brian would in December, I don't know, for some reason I feel like if you get this, you're all in. You want to make it work, you're just going to figure it out. You're not going to back out, which is great. However, what we're looking at here is before all this started, we were looking to fill one very important position. Now with this plan, we're filling one important position, then we're doing a dean of students position, then we're potentially doing a new teacher position. And all these kids come back to school in the fall and they have these new positions, new faces. And all we keep talking about is let's not try to change too much right now. Let's keep it comfortable. Everybody's still in mourning and it hasn't even been 6 months. I'm really concerned with a large group of change rather than one change. And of course, yes, if Brian were to decide for some reason when we do this that it's not for him, another round of change.
Right there, Mike.
I have no doubt that Ryan would put his heart into this. I know it worked, but there's a lot of moving pieces to it. And that's probably my only concern. The coaching aspect doesn't worry me. Maybe you could talk a little bit to the hierarchy of the chain, how that, I think that would be maybe the public's concern. Where does, the superintendent is the boss, the coach is here, and I know you've been good in the past with Derek as your boss as head coach, and you've said that to me before, and I understand that. But just your philosophy on that, I guess.
It's a good question. I think it would be the same thing, in terms about my coaching mentor to Derek.
Again, Mr. Korf, could you come on camera and speak up, please?
I think the answer to that question would be is that they would go to Derek. Derek is in charge of all activities, all concerns. Even if they would come to me as a principal, I always want the concern to go to Mr. Nelson first, so. That'd be the chain of command.
I think Mr. Korf has definitely proven himself in the leadership role he's played and coaching. I don't think there's been any concerns. I haven't seen anything. I think he's done an amazing job at both and been very flexible and able to handle both positions. I think he does a great job at where he's at now, and I don't want to push you. I know it's part of your future plan for sure. And I'd like to see you in the super position because the trust is already there with the community. You're visible. I mean, the faculty, the students, were not starting over there. But yet, like I said, you do an excellent job of what you are doing now. And I don't want to push you before you're ready. But
Greg wants to talk.
Start, Greg.
I raised my hand because I think there's a delay. I just didn't want to start talking before somebody else did. So I understand the board members' thoughts and ideas with regard to the approach that I had generally outlined. I think it's my opinion that a lot of those concerns are alleviated because I look at this as low risk and very flexible in terms of nothing's going to be locked in any capacity until there's an evaluation or reconsideration from principal or potentially Superintendent Korf's position in December. And in light of there not being a consensus with regard to the other finalists, you know, I think timing is everything. And I think the timing is perfect right now to proceed with Principal Korf as an interim, to give him an opportunity under the mentorship of Superintendent Ness, and to allow the district the opportunity to freely reconsider it in December, with worst case scenario being a newly hired teacher losing a position in the spring. If Principal Korf decides that he's not comfortable with the superintendent position at that time, or if the board makes that determination through evaluation, I just see too much upside versus downside.
We were looking at it from a least disruptive aspect, at least for our district. And if we're in the COVID stage where we can make do with a halftime soup, then maybe the sharing agreement with Norman County East might be something worth looking at. It might be more disruptive for Norman County East if they've got a backfill there. I don't know the details for sure, but no, it's probably the only two options we're looking at right now, in my mind. But
I think there's something, I don't know if disruptive is the right term I would use. think staff buy-in with Mr. Clark would be huge.
Yeah.
I think community support would be.
I was, just referring to having a
Yeah.
replace with a teacher, and then possibly, we don't know. So, okay, sorry to interrupt.
Either way, we're going to have change. Of course, the known commodity.
And to follow up, I don't mean to minimize the extent of, you know, a teacher coming on board and having his or her position uprooted as a result of a decision made in December. I'm not minimizing the impact that has on the students and the teacher itself. I just really am attracted to the flexibility associated with that option.
More thoughts on how to proceed?
Do you want to explain again how it would look like Warren County East?
The way I take it is similar to what was stated here, like a 60-40 split. Of course, there hasn't been any negotiations formally whatsoever. Just an idea that's been floated. Everybody would stay in their current roles, and then we would hire a part-time superintendent to fill the superintendency, and everything else would stay the same.
Does anybody have any additional thoughts on that?
Is that a viable option?
Honestly, we don't know.
Yeah.
To us, probably yes, but I have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah, true. We wouldn't know until we started opening up communication with them.
Part of me feels funny making this decision with missing one board member.
I suppose we can't even take her thoughts into consideration. Nobody knows any of it.
I have no idea.
She texted me and she couldn't make it, but she favored the admin plan. But she hasn't been here to help hear the discussion. So
Right.
Well, we take a recess.
They all look frozen.
Yeah, everyone. Oh, there, Jerry.
Jerry
moved.
moved.
Okay. Everybody looked frozen to us.
Yeah, there is a delay for some reason tonight that there hasn't been in the past. Specifically with Greg and Rudy, they've had a little bit of a delay. It's always you're in a tough spot here, and a decision needs to be made. I think there's cost savings in both. I think you have that. You go back. I know Brittany's concerned that there's some moving parts here. There's no question. But what you're doing, you would be leaving, Mr. Korf in the high school principal role, training that dean of students who would also be a familiar person to the students, and you'd be adding a teacher. sharing works with districts, other districts. I think it can work. I don't know. It again takes the right person, the right connection, and certainly those things are done in the district, typically with smaller schools, but it can be done. So I guess really, at some point, a motion will have to be made and seconded and discussed and voted on, I guess, is where you're really at. But you don't do that until you've got the answers that you need to make that motion. So if there's other things that you need from the admin team, from fellow board members, what do you need to help make the decision, I guess would be the answer from, or my question to you to help you.
The third option would be for an interim, and as time goes on, that pool probably gets snapped up a little bit, Jerry. I know some of them already have that.
Right. I guess I don't know what the pool for interims would be at this point. I think you'd be in this scenario where you'd be sharing, a part-time, like I mentioned before, typically a retired superintendent is your typical interim, and they're usually looking at 2-3 days a week. But again, you'd have to say how many days. You'd have to put the stipulations in the the posting and see who applies. So what you'd end up doing is contacting MASA, contacting MSBA, and getting names, and then seeking out people, and then bring someone in and talk to them. And if you like them, you start negotiations with an interim. It's a different hire than a permanent superintendent where you're posting and getting a big pool. And here you're looking for someone more specific and you can negotiate terms. That's what you would do.
Any more discussion? I'll get a pile of notes there, Brenda.
I know. Read them out loud.
Greg, any more thoughts?
No, I've expressed my thoughts.
Yes. Do we have anybody who wants to make a motion?
How do we word it?
I think your best is if you look on this page,
Yeah.
your options there. If those are one of your options that you're choosing.
I'd like to ask Mr. Nelson a question. Principal Nelson. With regard to two things, with regard to Principal Korf being extended an offer to be interim, and for purposes of this discussion, let's assume he says yes to that. Relating to the Dean of Students position, and then the hiring of presumably the hiring of a new teacher to fill the Dean of Students position. What's your thoughts from an administration standpoint on the disruption that would cause administration, staff, students?
I think it would be a smooth transition. I think we would find someone who would fit in with our current admin team very well. And, you know, we're bringing on some other new teachers, so it won't be like this is the only new teacher we're having this year. And, you know, I think any new teacher comes in and they're going to have some new ideas and probably pretty current on technology. So if we are using some distance learning or hybrid, would be probably pretty comfortable using technology. As long as these younger teachers are more experienced with that than some of our more veteran teachers.
As the activities director, do you have any concerns with a person in a superintendent position serving as a coach that you would be essentially supervising?
No, you know, he's been the high school principal, so in a way he's been, you know, kind of boss anyway. You know, as far as scheduling, as far as meetings go, we can, you know, I can make it so there wouldn't be games on days when he has school board meetings, things like that. So those are things that, you know, in the scheduling process, I've done a lot of things the last couple years to help out as far as a lot of double headers. So, you know, people that have kids playing both boys and girls can see. So, you know, I try to work with our coaches quite a bit, different needs, and schedule them to help what makes work for them as well, so that they can, you know, their family and their coaching as well. So I think there would be some flexibility in the scheduling part to help out as well.
Have you and Principal Korf, I'm not looking to find out, you know, any sort of every discussion in nook and cranny, but you know, I know that in light of this executive plan that was put together by you and Rudy and Superintendent Ness and Principal Korf, correct? Were there others involved with the executive plan?
I believe it was just the four of us. They might have got input from others outside of our couple meetings we had.
Do you mind if Principal Korf re-enters the video screen?
Mr. Larson, we kind of like it better when he's off.
Yeah, I don't. I like it when he's there. Principal Korf, I know you've touched on the coaching. I know you have a huge desire to coach and a passion for it. I've seen it for years. Do you see any practical concerns? Because when I mentioned my position earlier, and I don't know if people heard me correctly, but it contemplated you remaining in a coaching position if the offer was extended to you as an interim superintendent. So because I understand and appreciate your passion and strengths associated with coaching our student athletes here. If you had to, in your own words, explain difficulties you think you would encounter being an interim superintendent, or let's just call it superintendent, and a coach, what sort of difficulties do you see from your perspective that you would perhaps encounter?
I think the biggest thing is when you're being an administrator, when I'm involved with my activity, sometimes people think it takes away from other activities, maybe that you are heavily favored in that activity area and not trying to be fair to everyone. I think that's the biggest concern that possibly that might arise or has been discussed. But I've tried my best as a principal to connect with all kids of all activities, talk to them about, I want all kids to be successful. Coaching football and coaching basketball has been my kind of extended classroom that I get to take part and be engaged with the kids and help them. So I've really enjoyed that. So, and they've been a lot of fun to be around. So, and I want to continue to do that.
So would you say
Big
it's
concern
more,
is this being fair to all groups would be the biggest concern.
would you feel, would you say then, just so I understand you correctly, Principal Corf, would you say it's more of concerns you have personally with regard to the perception of you not being able to have the time versus actual obstacles that you would encounter as a superintendent and coach?
That would be my biggest concern. That'd be my concern.
All right, thanks, Brian.
Greg, I know Brian has discussed with me too. He wants to be visible at all the events, including the arts and band and all that, not show a favoritism towards a certain sport. And I think he'll do his darndest to make himself visible at those events too and show their support.
Well, my thought is, and I don't know what, and maybe I think maybe Mike Forsgren had, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, did you say something about you were concerned with the perception too in terms of?
I'm not concerned. I just wanted him to address the concern, I guess, because I know that thought is out there. So
I mean, I think, you know, we're all people that live in a rural outstate Minnesota, and whether we're involved heavily in different civic organizations or other endeavors, I mean, those are all things that take time away from our lives and our regular, you know, day-to-day activities. I don't know everything Principal Corf's involved in the community. My hunch is it's probably tough to be involved in a lot more because I've personally seen him on school grounds probably at every single hour of the day at some point. If I really, I mean, and I get that perception. I don't know who has that perception. I don't have that perception. And I know, Mike, you weren't saying you had that perception. And there certainly may be those in our district that could. But on the flip side is, you know, when we went through the hiring process, we wanted superintendents that would be able to immerse themselves in the culture of our entire school district. And I guess to have a superintendent also be part of our coaching staff and having a super huge passion to do it, to me, lines up with what we're looking for. In terms of experience, Principal Corf has 0. I recognize that. But that experience is made up of being so familiar with our district that that's going to allow him some time to speed up. You know, he doesn't have to he doesn't have to introduce himself to every single person in the community and in the district. We got a great mentor and Superintendent Ness. I really, I'm not ready to make a motion yet because I don't know. What I'd like to know is, board members, did anything that Principal Nelson and Principal Corf just say change how you feel one way or another versus with regard to Principal Corf becoming the interim superintendent?
I would say what you just said, Greg, I would echo in stating that of all the candidates we interviewed for super, they all said that they would spend their first year getting to know the community, getting involved, getting to know the students, getting to know the staff. He's already got that. Getting to know our vision, getting to know our mission. He knows that. So he's already got a jump start on the vision, where we want to go, where we are, or we want to proceed. He already has all that. So many of the things that the other candidates had said that they were going to spend their first year doing, he's already done. And I think that, I know you stated that he had no experience, and I know like as far as the official supervisor title, but I think the experiences that he has, and he's got everything that we need, I think. I know.
We can't forget we got Mr. Martinez here that's top notch and is going to make the transition a lot easier for a new superintendent coming in there. On the financial part of it, because years ago, superintendents, I do remember the financial piece was pretty significant burden on their shoulders, and now we've got a fantastic business manager. He's going to make that transition quite a bit easier.
I would agree with that. I feel much better having Rudy there to guide whoever we bring in.
All of you as admin work very well together, and I'm very confident in all of you.
I agree.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Okay. Does anybody want to make a motion?
I do.
Go ahead, Greg.
I move to extend an offer for the interim superintendent position to Principal Brian Korf, beginning on September 1, 2020, contingent upon current interim superintendent Ness remaining as interim superintendent until August 31, 2020, and contingent upon current superintendent Jerry Ness remaining as a mentor from a superintendent perspective for Principal Brian Korf until June 30, 2021. And contingent on the understanding that Principal Korf be supported and continue coaching student athletes enrolled in the Pelican Rapids School District.
One question, Greg, do we need to add interim superintendent / principal to that motion, or maybe Jerry could help?
Yes, I think you should, and I would like to see until license. You know, September 1 is the projected date, but if it's a little bit sooner or a little bit later, just to know that there's some flexibility in there. We can always change that in August when we know for sure. But I would have interim superintendent / secondary principal would be his title.
Okay, so nobody seconded my motion, so I can rescind my motion, I believe. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. If that motion was not seconded,
I think you can alter your motion as you see fit.
so I'm going to modify the motion I just stated. And before I do that, and I just want to reiterate the fact that there was no second to my motion because of the discussion that led to the clarification. Would it also be beneficial to include in that same motion the creation of the position of Dean of Students, or would that be done separately?
That would be done separately. Let me see here. You would do that at your June 1st special meeting.
Okay, so
That's what-
I can keep that out of this, that there's no need to include it in this motion with regard to.
Greg, the more I think about it, I think the cleaner would be is to rescind what you stated earlier and start over.
Okay, to rescind, then I think I need a motion. I'll move to rescind my prior motion with regard to extending an offer to Principal Corf for the interim superintendent position.
I'll second that. This is John. Any discussion on rescinding the motion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of rescinding the motion signify by saying aye, and I'll do a roll call. Greg?
Aye.
Brittany? Brenda? Mike? Aye. Okay, motion is rescinded.
So Jerry, with regard to that Dean of Students position though, you would suggest that that be addressed at the June 1 meeting?
With our special meeting agenda, we cannot alter the agenda.
Gotcha.
Yep. But that does not mean that we can't post for the position, knowing that it'll be on a future agenda item. So we can still post and move forward with plans and have motions in the future on June 1, or finalize things on June 1.
So I would like to make a motion, Jerry, and I'm not going to include anything with regard to the Dean of Students position.
Okay.
And, the contingencies obviously are just meant for clarification purposes. Those are not outlined on they're not, well, I guess section 6 of our agenda, agenda item 6 is extend the offer for position of Superintendent of Schools. It's my position, we can include any sort of restrictions or contingencies upon that, so long as the actual motion. So that's all, I'll proceed. So I have a motion, Chairperson John. Can I go ahead and proceed with that?
Yes, you may.
I move to extend an offer for the interim superintendent position to Brian Korf, who would also remain as secondary principal. And that the interim superintendent position begin on or around and or to be projected on or about September 1, 2020, contingent upon the following. Number 1, current interim superintendent Jerry Ness remains as interim superintendent to a date projected to be on or about August 31, 2020. Number 2, current interim superintendent Jerry Ness to continue to mentor Brian Korf in Brian Korf's superintendent capacity until June 30, 2021. And 3, that the school board, by and through this motion, expressly support Brian Korf's continuance of coaching student athletes enrolled in the Pelican Rapids School District. And
Greg, I want to add another contingency there for you. Attaining a Minnesota superintendent license.
And
I think that was implied, but as the September 1 date, but I think you need to have that in there as well.
and 4, contingent upon Principal Brian Korf obtaining his necessary superintendent licensure, which at this time is to be projected on or around September of 2020.
No clarification needed there, Jerry?
You know, I think just to review, you know, you're extending an offer to Brian Korf as interim superintendent / high school principal, contingent on him receiving his license, contingent on Jerry Ness remains interim until he obtains his license, contingent on the board supports him coaching, and I think I'm missing one, but I think that's sort of a summary for you.
And the mentorship.
And the mentorship, yes, through June 30th, yes.
I'll second that. Okay, we have a motion by Greg. I seconded. Any additional discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving Greg's motion signify by saying aye, and I'll do a roll call. Greg?
Aye.
Brittany? Aye. Okay. Brenda?
Aye.
Mike? Aye. Aye. Greg's motion carries. Now Barb's listening. She's probably got a full page of scratch there trying to figure out the motion, but it passes, so. Congratulations, Brian.
Thank you.
So Jerry, how does that offer get extended to Brian? I mean, the board has approved the motion and has taken the action. So how do we now, from a protocol standpoint, technically extend that offer to Principal Korf?
Well, your formal motion did extend the offer. Now you need to negotiate the contract. So I know Rudy is on deck, ready to negotiate. Who else from the board would be helping? This is more procedural now. So whether it's John and Mike, or I don't know if you have an executive committee that does negotiations with your superintendent, finalize that contract, and then that would be on your June 1 meeting. So that's next Monday, I believe, correct?
Typically, Mike and I would sit down with Rudy and negotiate.
Okay, so we can set up a time following this meeting that I think you two, first of all, should meet with Rudy and myself. You know, we have an interim contract already from this year for Dr. Richardson. I believe you would work off of that contract. It'd be slightly changed with the high school principal staying there. Then the signed contract would then come to the June 1st meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, we're about the end of our agenda here. I'm just going to rattle off the upcoming meetings. Special school board meeting again, Monday, June 1st at 6 p.m. High School Media Center. And we'll be doing it by Zoom again also. Our regular school board meeting is Monday, June 15th at 6 p.m. Same place, and we'll also be doing it in Zoom.
Clarification, John. Originally scheduled was a work session for June 1st. The June 1 special board meeting could start at 6 o'clock. There will just be a couple of items. It'll be very brief, not much discussion. Do you still want a work session following that?
Do we have anything we need to discuss in a work session? Will we have any more information from MDE or sports for the summer or activities that we can be brought up.
Let's, the administrators are on here. We'll plan on meeting either after this meeting or tomorrow morning. And we will come up with a list of things. And if we feel that we need a work session that we want to run through board, get them up to speed on something, maybe we'll ask for that and give you agenda items. We'll do the special meeting for sure on June 1st. And then tentatively plan on a work session. But if the admin team does not have specific things that to run by you guys, maybe you've been meeting out here a little bit here, so maybe we take a break. But appreciate all your energy and time you spent here. So
even if it's just a quick briefing, you could just bring it up or put it on the agenda.
yes, we can do that as well. We could put it right on the June 1st agenda in admin report. Yes, that's a good idea.
Okay. Anything else? All right. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will.
Motion by Brittany to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Brenda. Any discussion on adjourning? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and I'll do it by roll call. Greg?
Aye.
Brittany?
Aye.
Brenda?
Aye.
Mike? Aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.